Someone really threw me off the other day. They wanted to do a YouTube live stream, and they streamed it from their account. And I've never used live streams before. I've never used YouTube before, and I was just so thrown off for the interview.
They're kind of fun. A live show is different. You do all your podcasts pre-recorded like I do, but I also do live streams. And yeah, the live stream is a little more, you got to be on your toes about how you're doing things. And so, well, let's just jump right in. This is Scott Myslinski, you guys. You might know him from the Carnivore Cast. Go follow him over on Instagram, Carnivore Cast. And you've been out there doing your thing with your podcast. And so welcome to the show, and really happy to talk all things carnivore here today, if that's good with you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Jimmy. Thrilled to be here. I'm a huge fan. I've been following you since episode, I don't know, somewhere in the 500s.
1,700 something now. So that's
wow.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't listened to all of them, but you've been a huge influence and inspiration for me. I think back in the day, you encouraging so many of your guests to start their own podcasts is part of what inspired me to start my own. That's
really cool. Yeah, I probably have helped at least a couple hundred podcasters start their podcast. Wow. And then one of their very first guests, because I'm like, all right, if I'm going to help you, I'll be one of your guests to help get your name out there and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, that's been kind of cool because I started back when nobody had iPhones. It didn't exist yet. That's when I started the show. And then over time, people just started getting more accessible to podcasting. And, of course, everybody and even celebrities are now getting in on the act. I think the pandemic last year pushed a lot of them creatively. I need an outlet. So podcasting became I tell this statistic often. When I started, there was 900 total podcasts. So I was one of the very first health podcasts. Today, there's 1.4 million.
Wow. That's remarkable. Wow, I had no idea there were that many podcasts.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to kind of make yourself stick out. So when you created the Carnivore Cast, I was like, yeah, like about damn time somebody, like there's been other ones. Sean does a good job, Sean Baker, with his podcast. And there's many I'm going to insult, not saying all the carnivore podcasts now, but there's a lot of really good ones out there. But you're a layperson like me. You're out there, you live the carnivore lifestyle. You're trying to bring on guests and talk about things in that realm. Tell us your carnivore story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a thrill starting the podcast and learning from so many others and being able to highlight their stories. For me, I was a lightweight rower growing up, and in college I rode for 8 years, starting in 8th grade. Rode competitively at college, University of Pennsylvania, and that involved a lot of cutting weight and sort of binging as well. If you think of like a wrestler that they need to make weight for their meets, it's even more extreme with rowing. Actually, there's less oversight and rules around it. So many of my teammates would gain and lose 25 pounds each week. I was one of the lighter guys at 5'10", rowing 4 hours a day. I was like 149 pounds. And I was not healthy. I had a lot of gut issues, a lot of joint and bone issues, and just metabolically, I was not in a good place. So coming out of school, I was looking for a way to maintain good shape and get healthier, hopefully, no longer exercising for 4 hours a day. And so I happened upon, Tim Ferriss was very popular at the time. This was 2014, the slow carb diet and also 4 Hour Body. Yep. And Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf. And so I was basically trying to do paleo, but I was doing a cheat meal once a week, and I was still not in the greatest of shape. I was starting intermittent fasting, and I was also stacking all of this on top of working, 90 hours a week in management consulting, drinking a lot of coffee, like a lot of stress, fire drills, they call them. And, slowly that evolved over the course of 2014. In the coming years to more of a keto type diet. At the time, keto wasn't even the term used. A big influence on me was actually Sam Feltham with Smash the Fat. I'm sure Jimmy. And I started eating basically what was a high protein version of a ketogenic diet, just not really tracking my macronutrients, fasting, eating 2 big meals a day, and keeping it to only green vegetables, cauliflower, etc., having some added fat, but not a ton of it. And I was feeling pretty good on that. Again, I think I was probably fasting too much, probably having too much coffee, given my already low body weight, and my exercise. And I was listening to the Two Keto Dudes podcast at the end of 2016, and they had Amber O'Hearn on. And I had been following Ash Simmons, Carnivore's Creed on Twitter, a guy who's been doing carnivore for decades now. But Amber was talking about, a lot of the epidemiological evidence that's demonized saturated fat, eggs, cholesterol that we know now is not correct, is the same evidence that supports vegetables being great health foods.
Right.
And so I said, hey, that's really interesting. And then she also added on, and in fact, not only are they not necessarily as beneficial as we thought, there's a lot of evidence that they could be negative. They have phytochemicals, phytonutrients, they're often called, like sicylates, oxalates, exactly, that could be harming us because plants through evolution couldn't run away, they couldn't attack their predators, so their only defense was chemical warfare. And so I thought that was really intriguing, and I was already eating pretty high amounts of meat and not feeling super satisfied. And so I said, what if I just eat as much meat as I want, but cut out the vegetables? And there was no Sean Baker, there was no Paul Saladino, there wasn't you, Jimmy, with your resources to explain how to do a carnivore diet correctly. There were a lot of keto folks. And so I made a ton of mistakes.
Well, the day they didn't call it carnivore, because when I first came on the scene back in 2005, first blogging, and then this podcast started 2006, they called themselves zero-carbers.
Yeah, Charles Washington.
Well, Charles Washington and Kelly Hogan,
yeah,
and Amber, they were all the OGs of what originally was the carnivore diet, which was the zero-carb diet. I remember my first impression of the zero-carbers wasn't so much that I thought it was totally preposterous to cut out all carbs. I was at 20. Wasn't a big leap to go to zero. But it just was the arrogance of, well, this is the only way. So they kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I told Kelly that many years later, just recently, and she's like, wow, I didn't even realize that it was coming across that way. And not her specifically, but others in there. Do you feel even today that the carnivore community has a bit of an aggressive look and feel from certain people?
Great question. I think certain people, I think the vast majority of people aren't that way, especially, they can come off that way on social media in a soundbite, in an Instagram post, in a story. But especially if you get anyone, even the people who seem the most extreme on a podcast, talk to them a little bit, present some ideas, they'll say, not everyone needs to be carnivore. Carnivore isn't a life commitment, et cetera, et cetera.
Problem is, it's the imagery of when people search out carnivore and they find one of these people, they could be playing a part on social media to get attention, but that's now how they're viewed. And I'll give you an example of this from the vegan world. I had on this show the 30 bananas a day guy, Harley Johnstone, writer from Australia. I had him on my show because I'm like, nobody can be that big of an asshole in person. No, it's not possible.
Yeah.
He wasn't as big. He was still an asshole, but he wasn't as big of one. And he had a nice conversation with me. He was still totally wrong about nutrition, but the persona, and I remember I asked him that specifically, why are you such a prick on camera? And he's like, oh, you have to get attention to stand out. I'm like, I have never been that way in my own work.
No, not at all.
Work speak for itself. And I have a pretty good following. And so it was kind of weird to me that there are people that feel like they need to be bombastic and boisterous just to get attention, which I think just be genuine to who you are, which is why I love what you do. You're not anything more than Scott Myslinski. You're just presenting it, take it or leave it, and I'll be okay in my life. You go be okay in your life.
Yeah, I try. I try not to be dogmatic or really try to preach or proselytize carnivore diet as one size fits all or a magic pill. It's, this is something that that has helped a lot of people. It could help you. Self-experimentation is awesome, but if you're doing great, if you're motoring along, if, like Rob Wolf says, you look, perform, and feel your best doing what you're doing, then don't change anything.
Yeah, and you're right. Most of the carnivore community, you get them on a podcast. I've interviewed a bunch of them on this show. They'll be the first to say, hey, I don't think everybody needs to be on a carnivore diet. Just like I get pegged in keto that way. Oh, Jimmy Moore wants everybody to eat keto. I'm like, when have I ever explicitly said that?
No.
So I don't care how someone eats. I just present information and say, okay, here's the information, do with it as you will. And as informed individual people who can make their own choices, I trust people to do what's best for them. Carnivore fits that. In fact, my diet today, Scott, you'll be pleased to know that for the past 3 years, I've probably done more keto carnivore, where I did higher fat kind of carnivore at first.
Yeah.
I'm now leaning even a little more protein, not high protein, but more protein than I did even 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You shift with it. And that's the fun part about nutrition. You should never stay static on any one given way of eating. You should constantly be evolving it, because guess what? You today is different than you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You need to change.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And it's been great to watch your journey, Jimmy, all the way back to, you doing your crazy protein sparing modified fast experiments under the advisement of Ted Naiman to where you are today. It's been really interesting.
That was interesting. And I did an experiment on another podcast, Keto Hacking MD podcast, with John Lemansky, and we got Ted to help us design it. It was supposed to be high protein, just to see what would happen. And I was getting hypoglycemia. But again, it goes back to, you got to figure out what's right for you. Like, somebody could have eaten that exact same macronutrient ratio that I did, which ended up being about 45% protein and 55% fat. And it was a hell of a lot of protein.
Yeah.
I was chicken breast trying to get enough protein in. And I did poorly because I felt bad. They think that I might have some kind of a malfunction in the gluconeogenesis process. So it didn't quite, translate over very well. There might be a glucagon issue. There's a lot of like moving parts to figuring out what's right for you. But what it did tell me is that's wrong. And I also did the flip side of that. I went super high fat. And again, all carnivore based, 90% fat diet. I did super bad with that one as well. So between 40 or 55% fat and 90% fat is probably my sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where I fall, somewhere around 70% fat in my diet. I don't count it. I just eat my food, enjoy the food. And that's something, again, that I think you try to bring out in your work is, look, it's just food. Just eat the food. Let it nourish you. Do you look and feel and perform at your optimum, like Rob Wolf says? Good, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so starting out for me, like the zeroing in on health group was there, but I guess the resources weren't as widespread as they are today. Right. How to begin a carnivore diet, how to get started. There's books, there's podcasts, there's everything. And so I made a lot of mistakes. I was doing a lot of things wrong, actually, with my version of carnivore, but I still saw a lot of great results and progress in terms of my digestion, my mood, my energy, my body composition. And so that was really encouraging, and I stuck with it, and I learned a lot over the years. And from 2016 to 2019, started the podcast and interviewed a lot of people and got help from a lot of experts, and also tried to, a big part of my podcast is exposing N=1 success stories of folks who have overcome Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, PCOS, major depression, et cetera, with carnivore or ketogenic diets, in addition to the experts and researchers, to try to just, again, change people's thinking, not necessarily persuade them, but open them up to the possibility that, hey, I actually have an aunt with major depression. Maybe this would help her. Maybe I'll shoot her this podcast. Maybe she'll try it for 30 days, for 60 days. If that can do that for people and maybe help some people, that's all I'm about. That's my goal.
You guys tried the Paleo Valley beef sticks? These beef sticks are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. And many of the grass-fed beef sticks on the market today are actually finished with grains. They use beef sourced from small domestic farms in the United States. They only use real organic spices to flavor the beef sticks versus all the conventional spices sprayed with pesticides and other natural flavors from GMO. They also ferment the sticks, which creates naturally occurring probiotics, all great for your gut health. And best of all, they taste amazing. Again, they're Paleo Valley, my favorite beef stick on the market today. Go check them out, you guys. PaleoValley.com. Use the coupon code Jimmy at checkout for 15% off your first order. Paleo Valley beef sticks.
Well, and you do a good job of it, and I admire anyone that's willing to do this medium here, because it looks easy, but it's not always so easy. So I add kudos, because you've been at this now for a little bit, and that's great. Like most people get excited about doing a podcast, and they're excited. They do 10 episodes, and they're like, crap, that's a lot of work. And I do 4 a week. So those people that say once a week's too much, I'm like, yeah, hold my beer.
I'm not on your level, Jimmy.
No, and I'm a madman. So, but I'm also passionate, and I love the craft. I love the connection with people. That's one reason I do this show, and it's been a godsend during the pandemic when we can't really see a lot of people. The podcast and being able to do video and see people, it's not the same as being with people, but it's pretty close. So, and I love that you've taken this chance. So why a podcast? Why not a YouTube channel? Why not other mediums? What was it about the podcasting format that was attractive to you?
Yeah, so I was a huge fan of podcasts and have listened to podcasts for a long time. And at the time I was, probably listening to 4 to 6 hours of podcasts a day myself. And, as you said, I was listening to great shows like yours and Sean Baker's and Two Keto Dudes, and all of these podcasts were having carnivore guests on, but there was no podcast branded as carnivore, as meant to be specifically for the carnivore community and for people to learn about carnivore. And so, less from oh, great, this is going to be my chance to make money or something like that. It was more so like, I really want to connect with the carnivore community. I want to be deep in this community. Like many carnivores, I probably felt a little bit like a social outcast for being so strict and intense about my diet. And like you said, Jimmy, I wanted that social connection, and I also wanted to embrace the community and meet people. And so Carnivore Cast just seemed like a natural extension of that.
Well, and here's the fun part about it. Like, I had no idea how far and wide Living La Vida Low Carb had made it until 2012. I got to go speak in Australia for the first time. I've been able to do it 3 times now, but awesome. First 2012, didn't even have Keto Clarity or anything yet. I was just a podcaster. Yeah. I remember my first talk was in front of this audience in Melbourne, Australia, and it was probably 300 people in the audience. And I threw out the question, so how many of you have heard of the Living La Vida Low Carb show? 3/4 of their hands went up in the air. What? Like, to me, and you probably don't even realize the reach Carnivore Cast is having. To me, and us Americans, we just think here locally, but this is global. Like, if you ever go on some of those podcasting charts around the world, click on the different countries. I'm big in Australia, Canada, US, UK. I mean, it's different countries, and you'll get to see just how big your podcast is. And it was humbling at the same time, because I was like, oh crap, when I get behind the microphone, there's more people listening than I thought. But it's cool, because there's such a connection that when we get to have conferences again, Scott Myslinski will get to go to some carnivore or keto conference, and they're going to know you, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, that episode would so change my life. Or I heard a story of this N=1 person that you shared, and my goodness, that was what got me to start carnivore. Like, that's the kind of thing that will stick with you for a lifetime.
Yeah, so much so. And I went to the first Boulder Carnivore conference put on by Amber a couple years back, and that was just so meaningful to meet all these people in person who I had spoken with over the podcast, and to shake their hands, give them hugs, share a carnivore meal with them, and like also hear from fans just and listeners, just as you said. And I was really sad that like KetoCon and all of these other conferences essentially got kind of shut down and crowded out by the pandemic, because I was so looking forward to more of that. Yeah. It's one level to connect with all these people online, but then to go to these conferences and really feel so deeply as a part of this community is really wonderful.
Well, it looks like they're coming back later this year. I know the Las Vegas Keto Expo is coming in October. I think I saw Low Carb USA is putting on an event, maybe the Metabolic Health Conference. So there's a bunch of them coming back. Awesome. Slowly but surely, we're getting back there. But I'll never forget the first big conference I went to was a paleo one. This was in 2011. It was the Ancestral Health Symposium. And I was the token low carb guy in the paleo space. And so, yeah, we'll appease you. Come on. But I go there and nobody knows what I look like. All they heard was the podcast. So Dr. Robert Lustig walked up to me. Hey, Jimmy, how are you? And because I had interviewed him. And as soon as I spoke, all these heads whipped around because they recognized your voice. And I'm sure you got a lot of that at the Boulder event where, oh my gosh, that's Carnivore Cast.
Yeah, a bit. I'm sure I don't get nearly as much as you, but someone, I would be chatting to someone in a group or like one person, and someone else would go, do I know you? What? Oh, you're Scott. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's always fun.
It's kind of cool. And the funny part is, yes, this does take a lot of work, but when you love it and you're good at it, which you are, it just oozes with enthusiasm, and people want to connect with you. It's almost like you have family and friends that you didn't know you had. And I tell people that when they meet me, you don't know who I am. I'm like, that's okay. You're still family. Come here, and I'll give them a big.
That's great.
It's awesome. I love what this lets us do with our audience.
Absolutely. Me too.
Well, let's get into a little more of kind of the carnivore controversies that are out there, because there are some, for lack of a better term, shit stirrers out there that like to bring things up. So let's go to Paul Saladino and what he's up to now. First it was Honeygate. Now it's Fruitgate. Like what? I mean, at the end of the day, again, it goes back to the Rob Wolf thing. Do you look, feel, and perform at your best? Hey, look, if he's doing well with that, why are people giving him crap about it?
Yeah, I think Paul's a great guy, and he's brought a lot of attention and science and perspective to the carnivore community, and I think he's helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So I have utmost respect for him. I think people are pushing back a lot on him incorporating some of these foods into his diet. I think some of it is justified. A lot of it is not. What works well for him, and that's great. That's fantastic. And, especially given the context of his activity levels and the fact that he's, a super lean guy, pretty muscular, out there surfing, running, boxing, doing all these activities, his metabolism can probably pretty easily support some fruit or some honey. What I'm like less of a fan of personally is saying like these foods are carnivore or are not carnivore, and like trying to shape them into a box just because bee produces it versus it comes from a plant. I think that's kind of an arbitrary distinction, and really it should be like these foods work well for us, don't work well for us, are more harmful for us or less harmful for us. How do they fit certain goals? If the goal is to stay in ketosis, these foods keep us in ketosis, these don't. If the goal is to minimize plant toxins, honey is a way to do that. Maybe something like white rice is another way to do that. Just because it's a grain, it doesn't mean like, oh, doesn't fit the carnivore box, throw it out. So I think for me, it's more about, and I always say on my podcast, carnivore isn't black or white.
No.
It's a spectrum. And just because you had an avocado, because you had some dark chocolate, it doesn't mean you're not a carnivore. Maybe you're not 100% strict carnivore, only eat animal foods all the time, but I'd still classify that as, a carnivore diet. And you can be a carnivore, and you can be in all the carnivore groups, and you can talk to carnivores. No one's going to take your card away.
I love what Rebecca Farmer, Tailored Keto Health, does. She makes these carnivore brownies and blondies, and the only thing that's really not carnivore friendly is the sweetener that she puts in, a little bit of stevia or whatever she puts in there. And so she says, I'm carnivore with a little bit of ketovore mixed in. And I love that. Like the dogma of it. And back to the honey, the people that are like, well, it's like milk from a cow. No, honey from a bee being carnivore is not like milk from a cow being carnivore. Let's don't go there. No. There is a little bit of lactose in milk. But there's a whole lot of fructose in honey. So let's not pretend like that they're an equivalency.
Yeah. Like foods don't get a free pass just because they came from an animal, and foods aren't blacklisted just because they came from a plant is kind of my motto.
Although chicken eggs are the bomb diggity, dude. I've got 13 backyard chickens, and they poop me out a bunch of eggs every day, which I am so glad. I'd rather eat their eggs than them, because as long as they're providing eggs, they're going to keep, they're going to stay alive.
I'm so jealous. My wife likes to play a game, which is like, how many chickens would we need to support ourselves? Yeah. Which I have no idea, but it's a fun.
I can tell you, I'm by myself, and I have 13 chickens. They're giving me during the summer months about 8 to 9 eggs a day.
Wow. And
then during the winter months, it could go down as low as like 4 to 5 a day. And then if they start, what is that, where they kind of go dormant for a bit, where they don't lay any, they gave me like 8 weeks of no eggs. I was no. Killing me, girls. Homeboy is hungry and needs some eggs, because I actually had to go to the store and buy like a dozen of it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a few today. These aren't the same as yours, girl. And I was just like, well, I know, first world problems. But anyway.
Put them in front of them. This is what you did to me.
Yeah, yes. But yeah, it's fun when you get close to your food like that. And that's the ideal anyway. That's, you can't talk about eat real food if you don't do things to put real food in front of yourself. So if you're carnivore, chickens are the easy thing to do. Maybe have goats. That would also be another easy thing, and have goat milk. It's a little hard to have a cow in your backyard. Although I would love that, or pigs or duck. Like I could probably get some ducks to go back there with the girls, but I'd need to have a little aquaponics pond or something built. Anyway, # goals. So
yeah, I'll follow along.
Yeah.
I are doing keto, but he's struggling. Just use Keto Chow, the magical meal replacement that makes keto easy. Keto Chow has sold over 8 million meals and has thousands of 5-star reviews like these. Keto Chow helped me reverse my pre-diabetes and eliminate my sleep apnea. Keto Chow satisfies my sweet tooth without the guilt. Once upon a time, you clicked here and we're happy with Keto Chow ever after.
I did it. Jimmy loves KetoChow.com.
Yes. So let's go to the next controversy, because good old Nutrition with Judy decided to talk about
carnivore diet and just not
stop eating liver, she says.
I would really recommend watching the entire interview, because
so I'm not gonna get too deep in it. She did put that out there the other day, and of course everybody's, oh my gosh, how do you stop eating liver? The crux of it, if you haven't seen it yet, you have probably, but
I haven't.
Vitamin A toxicity, because there's a lot of vitamin A, which is a deficiency for a lot of people. It's one of the fat soluble vitamins. I mean, do you think it's a big deal? People should not eat liver. I would only give the one caveat. I haven't dug real deep into what she's saying other than the vitamin A toxicity part. Don't eat it from a conventional animal. Eat it from a grass-fed, grass-finished animal, but in the right amounts. Nobody's saying eat a whole big chunk of liver. I remember Chris Kresser used to talk about just get little slivers, put them in your freezer and swallow them like pills. And that's it. It's just, you just need a little bit a day.
Yeah. I think that's probably right. I haven't dug into what Judy's saying, but she's incredibly smart. So I trust that she has great reasons behind it. But yeah, I think you can overdo anything. And I've overdone liver myself where it just becomes repulsive. So a lot of people find liver repulsive to start. But actually it took me like 2 or 3 years on carnivore to even start enjoying liver. So I always tell people that, like, don't think you're lost from liver forever. You may develop a taste for it, which I actually did, slowly and incrementally. And I can talk about that if you're interested. But I think I've also, even now loving liver, I've had weeks where I had, over a pound of liver in a week, and then all of a sudden my taste for it disappears, and like I can't stand it, and thinking about it makes me nauseous. And this is a huge oversimplification and not super scientific, but intuitively kind of makes sense. I just don't eat it then for a couple weeks because it doesn't appeal at all. I have no taste for it. It's kind of like if you ate a ton of protein and you just said, I don't really want more protein, I want more fat, or vice versa.
Well, and I think the body is an incredibly intelligent specimen, because I think we get cravings for things that we have a nutrient deficiency for. This is why people crave dark chocolate. They need magnesium. Yeah. And they don't see it that way. And even sometimes when we get carb cravings, it's not so much the carbs you're craving, but the nutrients that might have been infused into that food that the brain then remembers, hey, when you had X, it made me feel better because I got that nutrient sufficiency. Whereas
salt, especially.
And salt, yes. Dude, I keep a little plate of salt around, Redmond's real salt, all the time. Awesome. For when I kind of get that little woozy feeling or just kind of feel hunger, but I know it's not hunger, I'll put that under the tongue. In fact, I'm going to do it right now. And it's just fun, man. And and especially when I'm fasting, that's like a godsend to have that stuff around. But yeah, people, they misinterpret the cues their body gives them, or they think, oh, I have a duty to eat liver every day because it's good for you. Well, it's good for you until it's not. Until your body's like, like us for you, we're good. And then at some point you'd be like, I think I'm ready to have some liver again. And then you have it again. I love that approach. That's ancestral, actually, what you're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll not have had it for a long time. And my wife will, she's very kind in that she like takes these big liver, we buy grass-fed, grass-finished liver, and she'll freeze it and she'll defrost it so she can divide it into portions for us. And she'll say, hey, I divided liver, Scott, do you want one? And I'll say, yeah, I actually haven't had it in like a month or so. I'd love some. And I'll have it and my brain will just light up and I'll feel more alive. And I'll be like, wow, I really wanted this, I guess. And then, sometimes I'll have it 3 or 4 days in a row, a quarter pound or maybe a little bit more of liver. And then I'll say, this really doesn't appeal. I think I need to take a break. So that's kind of my, dummy guide to liver.
Yeah. I take an organ complex, which has liver, it has brain, it has beef heart, and it's freeze dried into pill form, and you take about 6 of the pills. Not ideal, I get it. It's probably more bioavailable if you eat it in the way that you're doing it, but it works for me for now. But you kind of convincing me I should probably give it a try. Just suck it up, buttercup, for a period of time until taste buds go. But see, my problem is I'm a hyper taster. So I taste things to the nth degree. So whatever funkiness other people taste in liver, multiply it times 100. That's what my taste buds. And it's just, I that's why I can't drink coffee. I have a hard time with any strong flavors like that.
So I'll give you some tips. You've probably heard them all, but I'll throw them out there. One is start with like just microdosing it in your food. So if you have a meat processor, you can make burgers, you grind up some bacon in there, you get some fatty ground beef, and you just put a little bit of liver in it with it. And you can make liver burgers, which are delicious. Another is if you're too lazy to do that, or if you don't have a meat processor, you can get the US Wellness Meats liverwurst. It's pretty good. You can fry that up in butter. It's delicious, or bacon grease. And then one tip I got is when you freeze it and you make sure it's not like the thinnest liver, it actually has a little bit of meat on it. Liver tastes even worse when you overcook it, like way, way worse. So if you freeze it, and then you flash fry it in bacon grease, just like 10 seconds aside, it'll still be raw on the inside and it'll just have that bacon crisp sear on the outside. That's pretty delicious too.
The ceviche.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to do it.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay.
Take it slow.
I don't wanna, but I'll try now. You've convinced me. Okay. Another controversy. So I had Austin Cavelli on, Quality Carnivore, over on Instagram.
Yep.
I've interviewed all these carnivore people, and I know their deep, dark secrets. And Austin said on my show that she eats raw almost exclusively, and she's not the only one. I remember having Keto Apocalypse on as well. Really nice guy, Jason Carter is his name, and he said the same thing. He will eat most of his raw because it tastes better, the texture, they love that texture, and the nutrients are more bioavailable. So where do you stand on raw versus cooked? Does it matter?
Yeah, and I have a couple close friends in the carnivore community. Doug Wright is one of them. He's lost over 100 pounds on keto and carnivore. He's one of the moderators of World Carnivore Tribe, and another is Andrew Graff. He's really cool, Jimmy. You might want to have him on. He's an expert in insects and how they like their relationship with plants. But he's also not now. He eats only raw meat, but he's awesome. So both of them thrive on it. They swear by it. I've tried it in various forms. Most of my meat I cook very rare, and that's developed over time. You know, before carnivore, I liked my meat kind of medium or medium rare, but the longer I'm into it, the more I really like the taste of a rare steak. And I think people have to be careful, right? So I think with steaks and like liver and things like that, especially when it's been frozen, that kills a lot of the parasites. But I actually had a long podcast with Amber O'Hearn about this because both of us have had parasites and salmonella from eating raw meat. So you really have to be careful. I was in the hospital actually a couple of years ago, and I think it was from eating, really stupid grocery store ground beef cooked very rare, just like rare burgers seared on the outside. Yeah, pink or red in the middle. And not a good idea. So
behind this grocery store ground beef, people that don't know, when it starts to turn brown, all they do is take the package to the back, cut it off, and just kind of put it back through the grinder to make it look fresh again. It's not good. Like I don't even buy it from the grocery store anymore because when you don't do that anymore. Yeah. Which I love. I think you mentioned earlier U.S. Wellness Meats and other companies that kind of ship directly to you. That way it's good, it's fresh. They're not doing all these shady practices. Yeah, I'm surprised you did that to yourself.
Yeah, again, like I said, when I started carnivore, I was pretty stupid about it, and there weren't a lot of great resources out there, so I was doing a lot of things wrong. Now I get a lot of my meat from Bel Campo, which is a great company, and others, and I would feel a lot better about eating raw with those. But yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about, we evolved with fire. Cooking food potentially makes it more bioavailable in some cases. But my dog, for instance, is a carnivore. She's extremely healthy. People comment on her health all the time, and her coat, and she's a raw carnivore, and we're not that different from dogs in our digestive system, and cats are raw carnivores. So there are a lot of arguments to be made. And one of them could probably go way deeper on the science and the stomach acid and pH of meat and all these things. But for me, I prefer to eat my meat, at least slightly cooked, partly for safety reasons.
Right. And
raw liver is something I enjoy a lot. So that's the one thing I'll eat raw almost all the time.
Dude, I grew up, my mama taught us to eat medium well, like burgers and steaks. Yeah. That's the way I always got it until I had medium for the first time by accident. And I was like, why is this so good? Like, I still can't do medium rare always with all things, but I can do a prime rib steak medium rare. I still need the horseradish. How do you not do horseradish with a prime rib steak? But do you like prime rib or?
Yeah, love it. Absolutely.
So like it's one of those things that you kind of meander that direction. I don't know if I could go full raw all the time. I love cooked meat too much.
Yeah.
There's just magic, like you said. We have fire now for a reason. I do think you can overdo it. And I remember Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson and Chris Kresser and all them used to talk about when you overcook it, you can create the carcinogenic properties on the meat because of the glycation. Look it up if you don't know what I'm talking about, guys. But so I don't like having too much of that black stuff on my meat, but I do want it to be cooked enough that I get a nice smoky flavor that kind of gives enjoyment to eating the meat as well. But yeah, raw.
Yeah.
I think I can handle that all the time.
I'm a huge air fryer guy. That's my
air fryer is glorious, crispy all around.
That's right.
All right, let's do one more. So, organ meats versus just eating muscle meat. Is it necessary? I know you'll talk to some people, the nutrient density people, which, I'm in favor of people that, want to push nutrient density, but is it really necessary? It's almost like the argument in the keto world of strict keto versus dirty, lazy keto. So is there a dirty, lazy carnivore? Would that be like just eating conventional muscle meats versus strict carnivore, which would be like all the organ meats with the muscle meat?
Yeah, I don't want to create grades or tiers because I think that creates a false dichotomy and hierarchy. There's no JV team here, but like people should do what they can commit to and what they find sustainable. I would never tell someone, don't start a carnivore diet unless you can eat organ meats. And I would hate for someone to feel like they can't enjoy a carnivore diet and live a healthy carnivore keto lifestyle because they're not eating organs. That's the last thing I want. I think, I've debated this a lot and talked to Sean Baker, Amber O'Hearn, many others about the arguments, evolutionary, biological, etc., for and against organ meats. And you can bore yourself to death with that. But at the end of the day, I think, for me, I enjoy organ meats, actually. I feel a little bit better when I do eat liver. Like I said, my brain kind of lights up. I find it fun to experiment with different organs on days when I can't get it or I'm not feeling it. I take the supplements like you do. I use Optimal Carnivore. I really like them. But like I said, like if you're motoring along, feeling good, doing well, not having any real problems without organs, I would never say you have to have them. I'd say try it, see how you feel. If you enjoy it, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Yeah. It can be a fun part of the diet. If you're buying a whole cow or if you're getting meat from one of these sources, throw one of the organs in your cart, see what it's like and try it out.
Well, here's one of the fun parts. I used to have a local farm. They shut down a few years ago, but I used to go to the local farm and they did everything the right way, grass-fed, grass-finished, all the right things. And sometimes I'd be like, I want a cow tongue. Can you get me a cow tongue? Yeah, we'll get a cow tongue. And then they end up like giving me 2 or 3 of them for like $2.
Wow.
So sometimes because people just want the muscle meats, you can get real bargains because you forget. Yeah. Yes, it's not muscle meat, but it's still meat. It's still edible, like beef tongue. You never had beef tongue? It's amazing.
Or marrow bones. Like if you haven't had marrow bones, you're missing out. They're incredible. Yeah. So delicious.
Yeah, and brain, oh my gosh. And heart, beef heart, first time I had beef heart. People get freaked out because of where it is on the animal, but we never worry about the little hip that makes that nice ribeye steak that we love. It's like we don't think about where it is on the animal until it's the tongue, it's the brain, it's the heart. It's like, come on, people. Like, God didn't make that animal for it not to have great parts all over. So I think it's the goal, if we're going to describe this properly. It's the goal. Try to incorporate them. And I think over time, it's just like any other diet. You kind of start with the basics And then you kind of go, all right, I feel good, but I want to feel a little better. Let me try adding in liver. Let me try adding in heart and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And that happens organically, naturally for most people. They're not going, well, I know I need to be. No, they just want to. It's kind of like fasting. You don't just say, I'm not going to eat. No, you're going to be like, I'm not really hungry. I'm going to go a period of time without eating. So this is the fun part about any good, healthy nutritional modality is you will naturally graduate to another level constantly.
I love that. That's a great explanation.
Well, dude, you're doing great work on your Carnivore Cast. Again, guys, go check out Scott Myslinski on the Carnivore Cast over on Instagram. It's all over wherever you can listen to podcasts. I think my favorite one, Scott, is now you can ask Alexa to play your podcast.
Oh.
On there. Let me see. Alexa, play the Carnivore Cast.
Playing Carnivore Cast from Apple Podcasts. Here's the latest episode. Joao Franco. Over 3 years carnivore. Self-experimentation in conquering IBS. Depression. Chronic hunger.
Isn't that cool?
Welcome to the Carnivore Cast.
Welcome to the Carnivore Cast. Alexa, stop.
Wow, that was cool.
Isn't that neat? So, yeah, dude, you're doing your work, and I'm proud of you. Really happy you're out there in the podcasting fraternity, so to speak, of those of us that are trying to make our voices heard. And I love it. The more voices, the better. The more we can reach people, because who knows? Like you were inspired by all the people you mentioned earlier to start your podcast. Now look at you. There's people looking at you right now going, I want to do that because of Scott. So keep up the good work, man.
Thank you. Wow. That means a lot coming from you, Jimmy. I'm honored.
Guys, you know I'm all about healthy nutrition, and I have a brand new product I want to tell you about called Athletic Greens. This is not just a multivitamin. It has 75 essential elements that you want to have in your diet, from probiotics to greens to digestive enzymes to prebiotics. There's so many things that they pack into the Athletic Greens. The main reason why I love them is it puts it all in one place. Like literally you'd have to a la carte buy all of these different supplements, and they do it all in one package. So if you go to athleticgreens.com/Jimmy, and you can get a special discount if you go there, and the discount is you get a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D as well as some of their travel packs. Go check it out, you guys. athleticgreens.com/Jimmy.